Socio-cultural perspectives on second language learning. Now we begin our chapter 6 of your textbook, and we focus on the socio-cultural theory of language learning. Remember that socio-cultural theory of language is actually a theory of learning which has been applied by different researchers to language learning also. So the main premise of the socio-cultural perspective to second language learning is that language learning takes place in a social context. So for any learning, including language learning, the social context is extremely important. So yes, it supports the interactionist approach, but it pays a lot more importance to the interaction, because it says that learning is not a result of the interaction. However, it is within the interactions themselves taking place in a social context constitute learning. So they are extremely important in the learning of language or in any sort of learning. So we will focus on some key researchers who have taken it forward. And before we move on to that, we will talk also about Vygotsky, who was a Russian psychologist, socio-psychologist, and he was the one who proposed this approach, which was taken up after some time by other researchers. So a main name over here in socio-cultural theory, which you cannot possibly ignore, is that of James Lantoff. Now, James Lantoff has done a lot of work in this sociocultural theory, and I think two of his books are very important if you are interested to know more about the sociocultural theory. The first book, which talks about sociocultural theory in second language learning, and the other one is sociocultural approach to second language teaching. Both of these are a collection of papers based on research in which sociocultural approach has been used. So these are very important. So the point of sociocultural theory is that when the learners are in the classroom, it's not just their brains that are there in the classrooms. It's their whole beings are there in the classroom. They are there as human beings, and they're dealing with human beings to learn something. And it is the interaction between them that is extremely important for the learning. So we will talk more about that. And we need to remember that the significance of socio-cultural perspective for our classrooms is that it places emphasis on the context of the classroom, the relationships of trust between the teachers and the learners. So that means that if the learners are overly anxious in your classrooms, or if the learners are not interacting with others, their learning will be severely limited. So the learners have to have within the classrooms this space for learning, because knowledge itself or learning itself is not does not actually happen by transmission of knowledge. So it is not through something like that the children do not know anything when they are in the classrooms, and it is a teacher that is providing them or transmitting knowledge to them. But knowledge is co-constructed. The teachers together with the learners, construct knowledge. The children, with their peers or with their class fellows, actively construct knowledge. So whatever we give them as input of the knowledge is not necessarily registered or printed on the minds of the learners, even if they are the best students in the world, but they process that information in their mind, and it is their agency, their involvement that is important in the classrooms. And the agency of the learners cannot possibly be there unless and until they understand what is going on. So these are the things that the socio-cultural theory or perspective would emphasize and tell us what we can do to improve our classroom teaching.